Welcome back. It's Drinks Coach, or lowercase Vinesack, or Drinks Coach UK. Hit those buttons, talk to me on social media. You're watching this on YouTube. Hit the bell and subscribe for further updates. Today is a good day in the Wadsack household, because episode 103 is about German wine, which means it must be spring. I'm half German, hence my name. And we're talking about some of the best German wine there is, money can buy. This is in conjunction with my dear friends Matt Wilkin and Christian Honorez at adVINture. All the information is in the bio below. Please look. There's some really, really cool promotions, which I'll tell you about at the end. And it's done in conjunction with Wines of Germany. For example, there's one survey where it's a 5-minute survey to fill out, and you instantly get a £10 credit you can spend on any wines at adVINture, and there are better ones than that, and you can win whole cases of wine. So stay tuned for the end. Thank you, Matt, because he wrote me into doing this. But what do I get out of it? I get to drink Dönnhoff. Dönnhoff, one of the great names of winemaking in Germany, and absolutely the king of the region it's from. Well, more about that in a minute. But also, just to give you a little bit more breadth on the offer that adVINture has on German wines, I've picked a couple of other wines from their range, which are not from the same region. I've got little maps, I'll explain most of it. But we've got a Silvaner from Franken. We have all these lovely wines from Nahe, from Dönnhoff, and stuck in the middle here with you is Johannes Leit's Rheingau Riesling, Dragonstone as it's now known. So without further ado, why Germany? Well, it's very, very hard to argue that Germany doesn't produce the world's best wine at the prices they sell them at. The value you get and the quality of winemaking you get from Germany, whether it's Spätburgunder, which is Pinot Noir, German Burgundies, for want of another name, can be absolutely astonishing quality and great value for money. Believe it or not, Germany is the third largest grower of Pinot Noir in the world, after the first, which is California, followed by second, naturally you'd think it was France. But if France wasn't making champagne, which is where most of the Pinot Noir goes, Germany would be the second largest grower of Pinot Noir in the world. Did you know that? Germany makes more still Pinot than France does. Extraordinary. Where's it been all our lives? Well, it's appearing now, and we're starting to understand what amazing value it is. And there are also some quite expensive ones, which are absolutely stellar quality, no doubt. Also, this gives me a chance to talk about Riesling. I know I did a couple of Riesling shows right at the beginning of lockdown, right at the beginning when I started all of this, and I think I've got a bit more of an idea of what I'm trying to do with all of this. And I would just do 4 or 5 different Rieslings from different countries, but not really talk about what Riesling is and what I think people's perceptions are and where they're right and wrong. But Riesling is a grape variety which doesn't make insipid, sweet, sickly, poorly made wines. There is no Riesling in the brands that people of my age know, like Liebfraumilch and Black Tower and Blue Nun. There wasn't any Riesling in them. They were made from Müller-Thurgau and Elbling in most cases. But I think because people think German Riesling is a German grape variety and it's planted in Germany, and because those brands are German that by rote they're made from Riesling, they're not. And Riesling has always been one of the 2 or 3, possibly the greatest, white grape variety on the planet. But why? What makes it great? Because that's up to you to decide, really, isn't it? If you prefer Prosecco, then drink Prosecco. I'm not going to stop you. And Riesling just has certain attributes and superpowers which other grape varieties don't quite have. One of the things that Riesling doesn't like is to be mucked about. You think about Rieslings around the world, the great Rieslings of the world, really, in the New World would probably be from South Australia, from the area of Polish Hill River and Clare Valley extended. There are some very, very good Rieslings in New Zealand. There are a couple in South Africa. They should grow more, I think. There's some nice Riesling in the southern winelands of Chile, in Biobío and places like that. But most of the Riesling that we talk about when we talk about fine Riesling either comes from Germany or from the northeast of France, from the Alsace. And in the Alsace, there's a lot more French winemaking going on. The wines are put into wood for a while. It might even be put into chestnut, not oak. They might be stirred. And they manipulate the wine a little bit, which can produce extraordinary results. But I don't think it achieves what Riesling can do when you just leave it by itself. And if you have pristine winemaking, natural yeast, hands-off approach to winemaking, what Riesling does more than any other grape variety in the world is take a microscope to where it's from. And you can taste where a Riesling is from in Germany with a bit of experience quite easily. Riesling, if it's been grown on slate, reeks of slate. If it's been grown on iron oxide red soils, it tastes of rust. If there's quartz in the soil, then it has this sparkle about it. I'm not making this up, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to get these wines right blind in professional tastings like the Master Wine Exam, and we're expected to. So I think Riesling is wonderful for that it actually just evokes the place it's from. And that's just as true of the fine Rieslings, like the great Rieslings of Hügel and Trimbach in the Alsace, and indeed, of course, the Rieslings from Australia and New Zealand. So, without further ado, I think we're going to start off with the wine, and then we'll just start talking into the subject. This has clearly not had my beautiful wife's fair hand on it. It's just a photocopy. It's not nearly as nice as the maps I normally show you. But just to give you an idea of the geography of Germany and the German wines of fame, this is called the Mosel. It was alternatively known as the Mosel Saar Ruwer. You've got the Mosel River, and then you've got the Saar and the Ruwer feeding into it. And for many people, this is the finest expression of Riesling in the world. I think it's one of the finest expressions, if not necessarily the most incredible expression. And these wines are scintillating and elegant and very mineralic and very perfumed and can age for a very long time. Amazing acidity as well. If we look to this bit here, the green bit, that's a very famous place. And this is supposedly where Riesling came from. The first time anybody found a Riesling grape or isolated it was at a place called Schloss Johannesburg. And Schloss Johannesburg's in this little green bit. And the wine is known all over the world, the pure form of Riesling, as Johannesburger Riesling. And this region is called the Rheingau. Very, very much this fine wine of many tables in Britain during the 60s and 70s. And they had some very good vintages then, 71, 76. So you've got Rheingau, you've got Mosel. You've got this bit in the middle, which we're going to come on to in a minute, called Nahe, which is kind of between the two geographically. You've got the Rheinhessen here, which is the big pink bit. And this area, which is an area of fantastic excitement, called the Pfalz, the Rhine-Pfalz. We've also got a little bit of yellow squeaking off here, which goes off the map in what was the Democratic Republic of East Germany. And that's Franken. That's where this chap comes from. And then you've got this huge red one here. That's Baden. Guess what? That's where Pinot Noir comes from. You can see it's quite a big region. So the ones we're talking about, the classic ones we're always taught to learn about, these are kind of coming into their own. Rheinpfalz, Rheinhessen, Baden, etc. But the ones we always were told we were concerned about when I started learning about wine was the Mosel and the Rheingau. And to a slightly lesser extent, this brown chap in the middle. Right. So we're going to go to the east. We're going all the way over here to a very, very flinty place. And we're going to try this. This is a wine. Oh, I love this wine. I've drunk this in so many restaurants in London. This is Fürst Silvaner Pur Mineral. And if that doesn't make a statement, I don't know what does. 2019 was a wonderful warm year. Some people thought it was a bit scorchy, but I loved it. It was very ample. And this is made from a grape variety called Silvaner. I spoke to the famous wine celebrity Oz Clarke many, many years ago about Silvaner, saying, do you like Silvaner? And he said, well, yeah, I do. In fact, I like Silvaner so much that I went to Colmar in the Alsace to be a celebrity judge at the world's best Silvaner competition. And people were invited to enter Silvaner from wherever it was grown. And there aren't many places that grow it, to be fair. And I said, what was it like? And he said, it was very disappointing. It was more like choosing a bowl to eat your cornflakes out of. They were all so samey, but there were exceptions. There are one or two producers. The one that comes straight to mind is Ostertag in the Alsace, who makes a very old vine Silvaner, and this entire region of Franken in Silvaner makes these incredible wines. Why it's different, I don't know. I imagine it's a lot to do with the local microclimate. They have a real heat trap there. The slopes are very steep. The soil is very, very flinty. So it has that kind of undertow of ozone and energy and some gunflint and smoke that you get in things like Pou Fumé, which makes what is otherwise quite a dull variety like Sauvignon Blanc really kind of come alive. So let's consider this kind of like the native Sauvignon Blanc of Germany. I think that's a fair place to start. I mean, I've just thought it up right now. It's got a pale green hue to it. There we go. And Silvaner can also make extraordinarily good sweet wines as well, if allowed to be made very, very sweet, or even as an ice wine when they pick the grapes when they're frozen. The acidity balances so much sugar that you have this. It's like a neutron bomb of wine, one pipetful of Trockenbeer and Auslese Silvaner from a top producer like Horst Sauer or indeed Fürst, and you drop it on your tongue. The whole mouth is filled with the flavour of apricots and lime and lemon verbena, and oh yeah, baby, oh my god, are they the best dessert wines in the world? Probably. If I had to pick one dessert wine in the world, it would come from Germany. That's me personally. It's just the electricity in those wines is so incredible. So let's have a look. It smells lovely and ripe for Silvaner. Can you smell that? It actually smells a little bit like some Italian varieties that we've come to love, like Falangina down in Campania near Naples. So slightly herby edge, like there's like a hint of fennel, but it's overlaid on a taste of I don't know, almost tropical fruit, slices of green melon, bit of lime. And then at the end, it's like these little nanobots come out and start tickling you inside. They're all tingly and sparkly. It's like jumping into a cold pool on a hot day. Absolutely fantastic. Let the warm weather commence. It's only 11.5% alcohol. I imagine there's a tiny amount of residual sugar in here, though I can't really tell. I mean, it does taste very dry, to be fair. Going back to adVINture and to Matt's offer, if you buy any German wines from him, the first big offer is that it's 10% off all his German wines. And he's being forced to sell wines which you could only ever get in top restaurants direct to you, so that he can make ends meet until the restaurants open again. So what you've got here is a range of wines which literally are usually not available at any price to people that aren't in the trade. And he's selling them to you at the price he'd probably sell to restaurants, minus 10%. You will never see, particularly this producer, Dönnhoff, Cornelius' wines, you'll never see them this inexpensive again. I'm not saying they're not cheap, they're not expensive, because they're pricey compared to everyday drinking. But they're inexpensive enough that you could have a bottle of this every week and enjoy it. It wouldn't make any difference to your life, not price-wise. We'll come on to that in a minute. But wow, what a drink. Very, very tasty. What would I drink? What would I eat with Silvaner? It's lovely with things like asparagus soup. I love it with a really fennelly salad with sliced fennel bulbs and tomatoes and a nice tangy dressing. It's lovely with fish, particularly oily fish. Smoked mackerel is really nice, I think, with Silvaner. It's a really, really versatile drink. This is a wine that would normally cost about 22, 23 quid, and I think he's selling it for £16 at the moment, or thereabouts. Absolutely brilliant bloody bottle of wine, especially if you're having fish at the weekend. Okay, moving on. Well, this is the time we now talk about Dönnhoff. Remember the map? Remember the map? We have Mosel here. Very famous names in the Mosel. J.J. Prum, Egon Müller, Schaefer, all sorts of fantastic producers there. Dr. Lozen, Ernie Lozen is very famous in the UK. Now this bit here in the middle, it's interesting. The legitimate demarcation of Mosel and Rheingau was set many, many, many years ago, over 100 years ago. And the bit in the middle was always seen to be a bit of a turd, really. And they said, well, you're either in the Mosel or you've got to go through Nahe to get to the Rheingau, where there's other really interesting soils. Very, very different soils, where if you planted exactly the same grapes in the same year, in the same conditions, you end up with completely different wines. That's the magic of Riesling, right? Well, Dönnhoff comes along. He starts making wines which are so astonishingly good well, we'll come on to the moment when Nahe suddenly became a celebrity region. But Nahe didn't get its demarcation, didn't get its license for its region, saying this is where it is and these are where the slopes are, until 1971. I was already alive at that point. 71 seems very, very recent to me. Probably not quite as recent to some of you bartenders watching this out there. But 71, I mean, it's supposed to be an old world winemaking country, making wine, and people living in these old wooden houses, drinking in old medieval times, well, largely. But Nahe only got its license to produce wine, was only considered one of the regions of Germany, and it was a bit like that about 50 years ago. And this guy turned everything on its head. There are other superb Riesling producers in the Nahe. I think I have to mention Schlossgut Deal, Emmerich Schönleber. There's a few others which I will have missed out. I apologise, but they're my favourites. And the wines from the Nahe, why are they different? Well, when I was being taught my trade exams, when I was doing my wine diploma, you often read, well, what's Nahe like then? Because you need a description of it, even if you haven't tried the wines. Well, the Mosel has very dark schist, very steep slopes. The wines are very, very glacial, very mineral, very crisp. They have a real clarity to them and definition, have a tang. Then you've got Rheingau, where there's a richness of minerality and earthiness and almost textural tannin to the wine because it's got so much minerality in it, and a power and a little bit more concentration and guile. And they say, well, Nahe's kind of between the two, but not in a good way. It's kind of either a slightly out of focus Mosel or it's a slightly unconcentrated Rheingau. Well, they were wrong, weren't they? A very, very famous wine writer called Robert Parker got one of the most experienced German wine professionals to score wines around Germany for the Robert Parker's famous Wine Advocate, which was the Bible. The first people to score wines out of 100 points. And if a wine gets 100 points, it triples in value and disappears off the market virtually instantly as people collect these wines with some sort of faint idea they think the wines are somehow perfect. What one person thinks is perfect is certainly not what somebody else thinks is perfect. However, I think you'll mostly agree that if an expert has given a wine 100 points, you're going to kind of like it, probably. There's going to be something likeable about it, or if it doesn't blow your mind completely. The first German wine to get 100 points was a Dönnhoff sweet wine from the Nahe. It was nice wine. And it continued to get 100 points, I think 4 or 5 times after that. So then I was going, hang on a minute, but Nahe is supposed to be this also-ran region. Well, that changed everything. And I absolutely adore the wines of Nahe, and I always have. What's different about it? Well, you've got black schist soils and basalt and slate in blue slate in the Mosel, and then in the Rheingau you've got a lot of iron oxide rich soils with a lot of flint and quartz in the mix up. In the Nahe, it was largely seen to be kind of fairly ordinary, not bad winemaking soils, but a lot of limestone. But there is limestone, but it's mixed in a very complex way with clay slate and a few other very, very complex tectonic mashups. This is kind of a collision point of 3 or 4 different rivers, and you can see that alluvial action and glacial action has basically made all this soil topsy-turvy underground, and it becomes very, very interesting to the sort of wine geographist what flavours come from what soils. And this whole area is an absolute menagerie of different styles of wine because the soils are so different. So let's look at the case of Dönnhoff wine. This was a case which you can buy from adVINture, from Matt. And he's given you 15% off the base price of the wines, which, once he's added VAT to them, was the price he was selling them to restaurants. So you will never see these wines at this price again, certainly not in the near future. But I wanted to show you kind of the range of wines from Dönnhoff, and in the same breath, therefore, introducing you to Nahe, one of the great wine regions of Germany, which is often forgotten about if your wine book is a bit too old. Okay, right, let's start with this. This is their entry wine. 2017 was a racy vintage. I don't think it was a particularly brilliant vintage, but there's certainly nothing wrong with it. And this is their entry-level dry wine. This would be rated at a quality level which they call QBA, Qualitätswein bestimmter Anbaugebiete, which they have this kind of rating system in Germany, which rates the quality of grapes based on how ripe they are, which is as good an example, a good system as any other in the world. Also, when you look at labels on German wines, they tend to look quite kind of confusing, but they're really not. As long as you have learnt 5 words in German, you can decipher them. They give you far more information than any other label that you would find, certainly on the front label anyway. This says Produce of Germany, Weinhaus Dönnhoff, Qualitätswein. It has what's called an Amtliche Prüfungsnummer, APNR, which is a unique wine to this batch, a unique number to this batch of wine. So you can't be fooled. It is... Any chance of fraud, which happens a lot in wine, is eradicated by the fact that this is all registered. And also says contains sulfites, well, most wines do. Okay, so let's have a crack at this and see what 2017 slightly off-dry Nahe gives us. We're not going to have to crack on through these. There's quite a lot of wines to get on with, so sorry if I go too fast. Right, so what's German Riesling famous for? The out-and-out smell, the Australians have a phrase for it, which is Kero character. There's an out-and-out smell in some German Rieslings, and certain Rieslings, even in Australia as well, which smells a little bit like paraffin, of gasoline, as the Americans would call it, or petrol notes. It's not supposed to put you off, it's just, there's a faint kind of complex phenol odour that once you taste the wine it goes away, but it's a wonderful kind of essential oil full of white peach and lime and stuff. There is a very slightly kind of tarry kind of, this is what the smell of slate is, kind of odour to the wine, which I think really does mark the wines out, and you can find that over time you get addicted to it, which I have. Well. This is a dry wine, Dönnhoff Riesling Trocken. The wine has a beautiful splash of ripeness across the palate. That's the basic one. I think this is under 15 quid if you buy it from adVINture. It's under 15, pretty sure. Like, I don't know, £13. Oh, bloody hell. You just think about all the wines this guy produced. There's many, many, many more wines than this. And this is made from the leftovers. Wow. It's got some power, some Rheingau power, and that slight petrol odour is very much more Rheingau in character than Mosel. So there's where the Rheingau comes in. It smells like Rheingau, but the palate is deft and tingly and sherbety. Taste of lime sherbet. It's so refreshing and so delicious, and it's so full of flavour. It really does belie the fact there's only 12% alcohol. There's a lot more flavour in there than 12% has any right to give you. But that's an absolutely fantastic entry point and delicious. And if that's the only wine you ever buy from Matt, then well done you. Buy 6 of those, you'll be thrilled. It goes with bloody everything. Fantastic. Shellfish, yeah. Oysters, crab, yeah. Moving on. Now, this is really fun. This is called Tonschiefer. Tonschiefer means clay slate, and this is a dry slate wine, but this wine I imagine is made from the vineyards which are more limestone based, and this has been isolated because certain blocks are on this very prized Nahe soil. So what I'm doing here is saying, well, what's the difference between the two? This one's a year older. This is the one from 2017. We'll try that as well. 2016, well, 15 was an absolutely huge vintage. 16 was quite elegant, a little dilute, but certainly made some nice wines. You just don't get bad vintages anymore. There's nothing like the level of Rheingau funk. You don't have the same smell of kerosene in here. It smells slaty. It smells like stone. Like, you know, when you stand at the sea and you breathe in, there's this palpable smell of ozone, which is all the sort of like waves crashing on the rocks. Not the marine smell, not the seaweed smell, but it's the smell of alpine fresh air. And people say, oh, I wish you could bottle alpine fresh air. Well, they have in Nahe, in Dönnhoff. Cornelius has taken over from his father, Cornelius Dönnhoff. He's now in charge of making these wines. And I think, if anything, his wines have become more detailed than they were when his father was making them, which were peerless anyway. But I think he's a fantastically talented winemaker. Right, we're going to try the same wine. Oh, this one's got a lovely punch of pink grapefruit on the finish. Really palpable. Not fake pink grapefruit, not pink grapefruit sweets. I mean, a segment of pink grapefruit. Really delicious twang at the end. So now when comparing this limestone, slightly petrol-y one, yes, there is a bit more petrol in 2017 actually, but this is the Ton Schiefer again. This is on a different soil. Oh, it's making the acid glands go crazy. All I can say is this tastes a bit young. I want to see that wine 2 years down the line. It's got amazing electricity. It's almost like licking the terminals on a battery. It's got such a bzz about it. Tastes volcanic. So this has a lot more power than this. More austerity, more... It reminds me more of big Austrian mountains. This one's more kind of meadows. Does that make any sense to anyone? I really hope it does, because that's what I'm thinking about. Crikey, that's a banger. I imagine that's over £20 normally, and I think it's weighing in at something like 16 or 17 pounds if you buy it at the moment with the 10% off, or if you buy the box, you get 15% off the lot. What a wine! What a wine! Fantastic. Okay, well, where's this going to stop? Okay, right. Those were the dry wines. Okay, we've done with dry. The vast majority of wine in Germany that's sold at very high price is now what we call Erster Gewächs or Grosser Gewächs. And they are expressions from the same vineyards that Germany's made wine from forever, but fully fermented dry. So they're big wines, 13-14% alcohol, incredible intensity. They give any Chablis a run for its money, and the very best ones are maybe the finest white wines in the world that just haven't really been appreciated yet. But traditionally, we've always known that with German wines, you can buy wines at different levels of sweetness. If the grapes are super sweet, you can either make it very alcoholic, or you can make it less alcoholic, but leave some sugar in the wine. So we're now in this, what I would call classic lineup of wines, one of which doesn't come from Cornelius Dönnhoff. What we've got here? This is the Dönnhoff Riesling. Remember, we had the Dönnhoff Riesling here, which was dry, which said 12% alcohol. This one says 10%. That then leads you to believe, because the grapes will be roughly the same ripeness, right, that 2% of the sugar is left as sugar. 2%. So it takes 21 grams per litre at room temperature to produce 1 degree of alcohol. So it's roughly about 18 grams in a bottle. So I'm thinking this wine will have a residual sugar somewhere between 30 and 40 grams, which sounds quite a lot. I mean, that's much sweeter than demi-sec. But remember how much acidity Riesling has. It might just be perfectly balanced. What I'm praying for here is that taste of minerality, but then also an almost palpable bite into a Cox's Pippin apple crunch, that incisive sweet and sour you get from delicious fresh fruit from my odd box that's just arrived over there. Yum, 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 crunch, crunch, crunch. I love fresh apples. Okay, so let's have a crack at this. Again, we're back to 2016. I can see it's a slightly different level of ripeness. It's started to evolve a little bit. It's a little drier than I expected. It's more like biting. It's more like pineapple. It doesn't have that incisive sweetness of apple. It's got more tang to the sugar. It's delicious. Kiwi fruit. That's what it tastes like. Kiwi fruit. Lovely. I imagine these wines are quite similarly priced, around the £15 or less mark. But we're talking about. Remember, we're talking about somebody who is making the. If you're not a Chardonnay head, Riesling's probably your favourite grape variety in the world. The world's best white grape varieties is probably either Chardonnay, Riesling, or Chenin Blanc to some people. That's an interesting one to throw in the mix. But we've also got in the best vineyards being made by one of the best exponents of the best grape variety in the world, and we're still not in the 20. This is the same price as a bottle of Provence Rosé. That's the point I'm trying to make, and this is, in many, many ways, a far more world-class constructed product as a wine than just a nice fluffy rosé while you're sitting in a cafe bar in Nice. Those wines are nice, and you know how much I love Provence Rosé. Go back and look at the 3 or 4 shows I've done on it. They're delicious. This is the almost opposite. Intensive farming, very, very concentrated, very difficult, attentive winemaking. The wines are mineralic, intense, and high in acid, where Provence Rosé is anything but. It's laid back on a deck chair, eating a choc ice with a pair of Ray-Bans on and just chilling out. So they're both ends of the tension world of wine. And so why can't I have both in the rack? I mean, yin and yang, right? So, we're now here at Lights. So, if Dönnhoff's here in the Nahe, we've gone to this famous region of the Rheingau. In fact, the most western tip, literally overlooking Bingham and Rhine, where there's rivers colluding, okay? And right there, overlooking that junction itself, at a place called Berg Schlossberg, is Lights. And Johannes Lights took over the family business in 1985, I think it was. And he makes wines which are truly magnificent. His Grosse Gewächs Berg Schlossberg Alter Reben is £150 a bottle. I mean, these wines are right up there in the firmament of the finest white wines known to man. And here we are, doing the Dönnhoff and coming back down to one of his kind of more accessible entry-level wines. And this wine was called Drakenstein. It's now put in English, Lights Dragonstone Riesling. And you can see a fantastic dragon on the label there. So, let's see what difference there is between 2017 Rheingau Riesling and a Nahe Riesling. I mean, it really is. Were they right? Does it have more to it? It's 9.5% alcohol, which leads me to believe it's going to be a lot sweeter. Oh, it's a gorgeous wine, though. And Lights to the Rheingau is pretty much what Dönnhoff is to Nahe. It's hard to argue, along with people like Raymond Weil. Not Raymond Weil, he made the watches. Who am I thinking of? Robert Weil, Willy, in fact. Lights, a few of the older exponents like Schloss Johannesburg. These are the founding pillars of world-class Riesling. Whenever I pour wines like this to my friends in Australia and New Zealand who are extremely expert at tasting, or indeed winemaking, these are the wines that make them just collapse onto their knees or their shoulder drop and they go, oh, God, why can't we do that? Why can't we have that soil? Definitely sweeter. That's like sinking your teeth into a fresh Charente melon. A little squeeze of lemon on it. Oh, so succulent, so mouth-watering. But you know what? Dönnhoff could have made their wines sweeter, and in fact they do. Bringing us on to the last 2 wines, which are the 2 specials in the case. If all the wines are of this quality in a box, which would have been 140 quid, it's down to about 115. This is for 6 wines. There are 2 single vineyard Dönnhoff wines in that box. You don't know how lucky you are. This wine's usually about 45 quid on the shelf. I think he's selling it for like 30 something. I don't know, but it may even be less. I can't remember. Anyway, we've got 2 here, and these are the 2 entry levels of ripeness going up. These aren't designed to be super sweet. These are wines which can still be drunk with food, or indeed they're the perfect drinks, if there is such a thing, the perfect wine to drink on its own, maybe a few nibbles, but they're perfectly balanced. We've got a Kabinett, which is the first level of ripeness, named after a wine that used to be kept by the abbot in the cabinet, literally, for passers-by. If they came in and wanted a glass of wine, he'd keep the best for people that would come in as guests, and he'd pour them a wine from the cabinet, which is where the name Kabinett comes from. Nothing to do with Cabernet, by the way. Okay, so this one, if you look at the label, it says Oberhäuser Leistenberg Riesling Kabinett. What the hell does that all mean? Well, it's simple, as long as you know the rules. The first thing is the town, pretty much, the commune, Oberhaus, Oberhäuser. The actual vineyard name is Leistenberg. So it's literally like an address, okay? Oberhäuser Leistenberg is made from Riesling and is of Kabinett ripeness. It's 9% alcohol, so I'm expecting this wine to have about 45 to 50 grams of sugar. For me, this is almost the perfect style of German Riesling because it's all about getting the balance of sugar and acidity so right that the wine is virtually isotonic. You put it in your mouth and it disappears. And it's just left with this mist of utterly delicious flavour. Maybe grapefruit, maybe lime. Let's see. But this is a Dönnhoff trick. Their cabinets are always absolutely stunning. This is the otherworldly, brilliant 2018 vintage as well. Let's have a look. Sorry. Sometimes you taste and smell things and go, oh, God, there's no way I can explain to you out there how nice or how well made this is. Flipping divine wine. Divine. It's sweet, but there's enough acidity there that it doesn't taste. It's sweet again, like fruit is sweet. It's sweet like a slice of mango is sweet. It's got the tension and tang of fresh fruit. Wow, that'd be delicious, just like that. Bowl of strawberries. Mm. I can hear the croquet balls knocking across the lawn. I wish I still had my straw boater from school. Right, now we're getting really down to serious business. As much as that's a wonderful vineyard, it's not one of its best. Norheimer Kirschheck Riesling Spätlese. That means Norheim, which is the town a bit further south than the other one. Pretty sure it's south. Kirschheck. That means cherry meadow, I think. Heck is a meadow or a copse. Cherry copse, they call that. So it's named off cherry copse. Whether that's because there was actually a cherry copse there is more likely than saying, oh, it tastes of cherries, so we gave it a silly name. No, there will be a cherry copse in Norheim by which this vineyard exists and has been there for many, many years. Riesling Spätlese means late picked. It means picked when the grapes are much, 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 much riper. They're left to hang for a long time. This wine is 8.5% alcohol. So it's lower in alcohol than the wines before. So it's been picked with more sugar, so it's got even more sweetness. So I imagine the sweetness of this is going to be up there, 70 or 80 grams. We're now in the realms, the grey area between pudding wine or dessert wine and merely deliciously sweet sipping wine. It's what I think the French lovingly refer to as a vin tendre, which is somewhere between demi-sec and liquoreux. Now, suddenly I'm smelling caramel notes. I'm smelling baked blackberries. A hint of rhubarb, ripe rhubarb. Honeysuckle. There's definitely honey. It's like somebody's drizzled some golden syrup into the fruit, like a summer pudding. Mm-hmm. What's sad about this is that wine should be kept for another 10 years. But, pow! It hits the tongue. Makes your eyes water. It's so rich in fruit, tang and sugar. Wow, it's like an adrenaline shot. Absolutely delicious. 2017 clearly had very good acidity. That wine is phenomenal. I kid you not, if I hadn't pulled the cork on that, left it in the rack, that wine would taste better in 20 years from now. People don't keep their German Riesling long enough. I think a lot of people have said that. But there you have it. Now, let me tell you about the special offers that adVINture have got for you in conjunction with Wines of Germany. First of all, 10% off any of his German wines, 15% off his mixed German cases. There's a case that's got a few Dönnhoffs, a few lights, a bit of Fürst in there. It looks like a fantastic kind of one-stop shop to learn about how good German wine can be coming up to spring. Second promotion. It only takes 10 minutes to complete it, but go online to the adVINture German Wine Survey. Chance to win a mixed case. He'll pull out a couple of surveys, and his two favourite surveys will receive a mixed case of 6 bottles of German wine. That's got to be worth 10 minutes. I don't think it takes 10 minutes. I've done it. It's less than that. Okay. Also, you receive a £10 adVINture voucher, which you can spend on any wine of your choice. Just for doing the survey, you get £10 off adVINture. Not just German wine. It's just off your bill next time you order some wine from adVINture. All the details, like I said, are in the bio below. If you don't have a bio because you're watching this on TV, go on your computer, go on your mobile phone, have a look. The details are all there. Just click on the button, off you go. Promo 3. This is the good one. Okay, got to concentrate now. For you social media lovies out there and you want to be opinion formers and influencers, what you need to do is this. You need to go to the adVINture website and subscribe to the mailing list. That's number 1. Subscribers are required then to post a German wine review and a photograph of the bottle. So buy any wine from him and then post a picture of it saying what you think of it and a photo of it. Then a tasting note about the wine. The most important thing then is to tag adVINture wines, to tag wines of Germany, UK, and to hashtag wines of Germany. Once you've done all of that, the best tasting note will see 50 quid store credit. How long will that take you to do? 5 minutes? £50 store credit. Unbelievable. If you got that and your £10 off and the discount, this case would have cost you about 40 quid or something. And that wine's worth 40 quid. Worth 50, actually. So, to recap. First, from Franken, out east, in the old country, before they've merged the two Germanys back to one again. Silvaner Pure Mineral. You won't find a more tangy, minerally, tingly dry wine this summer. We've got the Dönnhoff dry German Riesling. We've got the 2-ton Schiefer clay slate Rieslings. We've got the off-dry delicious QBA, which is a little bit like a baby Kabinett. We've got the Lights Drachenstein, which was a little sweeter. Fabulous summer supping as well. Great for watching the cricket with. Then we have Kabinett from a single vineyard. And then this magnificent piece at the end, which is almost worth the entire price of the case on its own. Norheimer Kirschek. Thank you very much. See you for episode 104. See you later.